Badlands. Explain those Badlands. That's a hell of a name.
All right, good morning, Badlandia. Welcome to Badlands Daily.
It really feels like the cat with the laser pointer. It's like you've led the cat up to the top of the building, and now you're leading it over the edge.
President Trump is rebalancing trade around the world and making things more fair for the American people.
I think that anytime the deep state can like overcapitalize in whatever situation they have, they're going to.
But the rest of it is a very well organized and well funded color revolution operation of the type they run all over the world again and again and again to destabilize entire society.
All right, good morning, Badlandia. Welcome to Badlands Daily. Made it through another week. It's Friday. Joined by Chris Paul. This was a good week, man. Another excellent week, actually.
Yeah.
Although we've got some breaking news.
Oh, we do?
Yeah. We got a couple breaking stories. So
lay it on me.
Well, we'll get into those right away. Before we do, well, not right away, I guess. Before we do that, we got to check out our sponsors for today's shows. And guys, Badlanders, you're all familiar with Loaded Gun Coffee. They've been longtime supporters of Badlands, and you may have met them in person at our GART events. But did you know they're a veteran-ran, family-owned shop in Lake Havasu, Arizona? Every bag of their whole bean coffee delivers a high-octane, patriotic punch of flavor with a long history of commitment to freedom. Every bag is a testament of pride and honor. From the skilled farmers who cultivate each blend to the roasters that handpick the finest coffee beans from around the world, Loaded Gun Coffee has mastered their unique brewing methods, resulting in the best tasting coffee around. This coffee is smooth and delicious, the perfect way to start your mornings. Get on over to badlandsmedia.tv/loaded and use promo code Badlands to save 10% off your order. And if you're in the Lake Havasu area, stop in the newly renovated shop and tell them we said hi. Well, tell them we told you to say hi. There you go. Again, that's badlandsmedia.tv/loaded. Promo code Badlands. Stay loaded with Loaded Gun Coffee. All right. And smash that thumbs up if you have not done so yet. Helps us out tremendously. And let's jump into the first story. And Don Lemon, federal prison, going to jail. Turns out you cannot go into a church and interrupt service even if you're a journalist who knowingly is participating in a conspiracy to obstruct civil rights under 18 U.S.C. 241. Who would have thunk that? Oh, man. The interesting thing about this, Chris, and I know you probably know about what happened earlier with him, but you had magistrate judges that were just absolutely ignoring federal law. I don't understand how going into a church and blocking people from leaving, interrupting their worship and everything else is not a violation of the FACE Act. But apparently a magistrate judge felt it wasn't. The appeals judge basically agreed with them, but said there's other means the DOJ can go through. And now we've got those means.
Well, obviously, I think that interrupting church services is terrible, but I have no love whatsoever for this ridiculous body of federal law. So if judges at lower levels start ignoring federal law, I'm not going to be upset about that.
Well, it says here Lemon was taken into custody by federal agents in Los Angeles, ironically, where he was covering the Grammys. maybe that was deliberate. You don't want to arrest him at his home. You want to do it at the Grammys. You got the red carpet. Don Lemon's out there interviewing Sydney Sweeney about her latest good jeans. And then federal agents come up and put him in cuffs and haul him away.
Well, yeah. I mean, this seems like the most scripted thing possible among a series of events, of scripted events that is never ending. So yeah, this seems ridiculous, but hey, let's see Let's see what the lessons and the morals of the story are, because that we can still focus on that even when the stories are total bullshit.
Well, so I'm with you. I'm not a fan of a lot of federal law. What, like, you think that people should just be able to go into private property and just do whatever?
I just don't think that the federal government should have anything to do with that.
So who would enforce that then?
Well, the state could enforce it. Local officials could enforce it. The people themselves could enforce it. Yeah. But the federal government has no business telling people where they can and can't go. Or, I mean, imagine this happened all over the country on one day. Do we send out the army to deal with all of the quote unquote protesters? These are the kinds of questions that we're facing, like, in principle now.
Yeah, I agree with that. And that's where, I think over what we've seen over the course of the last 2 weeks with DHS, I think even being, quote unquote MAGA, I lean more towards get rid of DHS. I'm with you on that. Move ICE somewhere, either military, Department of Defense, Department of War, someplace outside of the federal government. But other than that, like, federal law enforcement against American citizens is a concerning thing. But what would happen if Minnesota State Police, local police, if they refuse to enforce that law? I mean, at that point, what happens? People take law into their own hands. You're carrying concealed at church. Somebody comes in and stops you from being able to leave the church. If you look at the filings, and granted, these are filings from the DOJ, so they are, the DOJ's perspective of this. But apparently there were people, these protesters that were blocking parents from being able to get their children out of, I guess there's like a downstairs daycare, blocking parents from being able to do that. That's a recipe for getting shot.
Yeah, I totally agree with you about that. And the fact that that would be a recipe for being shot under a different scenario might be the sort of thing that would discourage them from doing it in the first place. Whereas dealing with federal law and a media apparatus and a corrupted court system and the rest of it might not be all that intimidating, since the people who run and operate and fund and direct all of that stuff are the same people funding and directing the protest movement. So
are we going with the first rule of natural law should be an armed society as a polite society?
I mean, it's not wrong.
It's fundamentally true. It's absolutely true. All right. So that's just a headline. We don't have much. They haven't announced any charges, just that he's been arrested at the Grammys. And I haven't seen any video of it. There's got to be video out there, but I haven't seen it yet. So
I'm sure that we will get video at some point today, and then that will be viral and everybody will be analyzing the video, and the TV character being arrested by another TV character. Like, we'll have Law and Order Grammys. It'll be just great.
It'll be excellent. We do have other breaking news, and this I am not that familiar with at all. It was kind of, theorized that this was going to happen, but President Trump has made it official. I am pleased to announce I am nominating Kevin Warsh. Warsh. It sounds like how Michiganders say wash, like when you wash your clothes, Warsh. I need a washcloth. I am nominating Kevin Warsh to be the chairman of the Board of Governors of the Federal Reserve. Kevin currently serves as the Shepherd Family Distinguished Visiting Fellow in Economics, that's a mouthful, at the Hoover Institution, and a lecturer at the Stanford Graduate School of Business, a partner at Stanley Druckenmiller and Duquesne Family Office, LLC. Kevin reached his AB from Stanford, his JD from Harvard. He's conducted extensive research in the field of economics and finances. Kevin issued an independent report on the Bank of England proposing reforms in the conduct of monetary policy in the UK. Parliament adopted the report's recommendations. Kevin Warsh became the youngest Fed governor ever at 35 and served as a member of the Board of Governors of the Federal Reserve System from 2006 until 2011. Very interesting time frame, as we were in that quote-unquote Great Recession. As the Federal Reserve's representative of the Group of 20, the G20, and as the board's emissary to the emerging and advanced economies of Asia. In addition, he was administrative governor, managing and overseeing the board's operations, personnel, and financial performance. Prior to his appointment to the board, from 2002 to 2006, Kevin served as special assistant to the president for economic policy and executive secretary of the White House. This is a long resume, Mr. President. Could you condense this a little bit, man, like a press release style? Kevin was a member of the Merger and Acquisitions Department at Morgan & Stanley in New York, serving as vice president and executive director. I've known Kevin for a long period of time and have no doubt that he will go down as one of the great Fed chairmen, maybe the best. On top of everything else, he is central casting.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. He just put it right there. He is quote unquote central casting, and he will never let you down. Congratulations, Kevin. President Donald J. Trump.
Yeah. So he has been centrally cast. And then following up that post, Trump made a post about Kevin Hassett and how great Kevin Hassett is. I don't know if you're going to bring that up, but
yeah, I was going to play because he's like on an apology tour. It's almost like not an apology tour, but like it's almost like he's saying, hey, you guys were really close. Like I wanted you guys, but
the central casting office chose Kevin Warsh, but Trump had Kevin Hassett or maybe even some of these other people in mind.
Yeah. It's like who was I think it was Kurt Russell was auditioning for Han Solo, and instead it went to Harrison Ford. And George Lucas had to put out an apology to Kurt Russell. You were a great actor, Kurt Russell. I really like you. You totally could have been Hans. But yeah. Trump says there was great speculation that highly respected Kevin Hassett was going to be named chairman of the Fed, and a great chairman he would have been. But quite honestly, he was doing such an outstanding job working with me and my team at the White House that I just didn't want to let him go. Kevin is indescribably good. So, and as the expression goes, if you can't do better, don't try to fix it. Thank you, Kevin, for doing such a great job. I think he had one more post about him. Yeah, he's got another one here. That's the same post again. Then he says Christopher Waller, Rick Ryder, who's I think he's BlackRock, and others were interviewed for the Fed position. They all would have been outstanding and have a great and unlimited future with Trump. Such amazing talent in our country. Thank you. Very interesting. One thing President Trump did not mention there is that he is Warsh is a Bilderberg guy as well. So
yeah, and there's a lot of those associations. It's important to remember that Scott Bessent he worked for Soros Capital. Yeah, so there's a lot of these connections in the people who are surrounding Trump and the administration, and some of those connections might be indicative of these people's priorities and their allegiances. And some of them might just be parts of their past that, they might have put their hearts into and done the work for and whatever, and then kind of had a change of heart and come around. That's what's happened to a lot of people. And I think that Donald Trump would be one of those people who says that in many ways that's happened to him. Now, maybe that's just part of Trump's story, but I think we have to be open about these things and just kind of see what happens. The other part of it is, I think we might have talked about this last week, but the Supreme Court just heard arguments dealing with the independence of the Fed. And if the Fed is no longer independent, and I would suggest these things have already happened, but if that's brought back under Treasury, then there's more influence from the people's elected representatives, at least theoretically under the system. Removing the Fed as an independent agency, that makes it impossible for the Fed to operate the way it was operating before. Anyhow, it would be great to be rid of the Fed in its entirety. Maybe we'll get to that point, but I'm not sure that this is worth the maybe mini freak out that we've seen in the 12 hours since it was announced.
Yeah, I don't know enough about this guy, so this is literally just breaking. I did see in our group, of course, G is already on top of this, that Warsh appears to be favorable to Bitcoin. So we'll check out this clip here.
You made reference to Bitcoin, and I thought I heard a little bit of condescension that people are buying Bitcoin and these things.
But doesn't it? Charlie Munger, this is 2 or 3 years before he died, Charlie Munger attacked Bitcoin. He called it evil, in part because it would begin to undermine the Fed's ability to manage the economy.
Or it could provide market discipline, or it could tell the world that things need to be fixed.
Bitcoin does not make you nervous.
Bitcoin does not make me nervous. I can hearken back to a dinner I had here in 2011 with someone who is another guest on your show. I won't say his name. I just did Mark Andreessen, who showed me the white paper. That was the original white paper. I wish I had understood as clearly as he did how transformative Bitcoin and this new technology would be. Bitcoin doesn't trouble me. I think of it as an important asset that can help inform policymakers when they're doing things right and wrong. It is not a substitute to the dollar. I think it can often be a very good policeman for policy. And if I were to speak more broadly to what did Charlie Munger and others perhaps have in mind, there is a proliferation of securities that go under all sorts of names. Many, if not most of them, are not worth what there might be being traded for. So what did Charlie say, and maybe his pal Warren say? There's the innovators, the imitators, and the incompetents. They're real innovators that are happening in and around that new technology. And what I would try to impart towards businesses and bankers is that the underlying technology that Mark showed me in that white paper, or tried to show me in that white paper, it's just software. It's just the newest, coolest software that will provide us an ability to do things that we could never have done before. Can the software be used for good and evil? Yes, both, like all software. Right. So I don't cast aspersions like that. If there's a final point, it's these technologies are being built here. I don't just mean on Stanford campus. I believe in the United States. And the world's most talented engineers from China and Europe and everywhere, they come to the United States even now to try to build this stuff. And my view is by building it here, that gives us an opportunity to be more productive and create something very special over the next decade.
So I don't know exactly when that was from, but that could have been the moment that swayed President Trump.
Could be.
I don't know. I don't know enough about that's more of a rug pull radio. I don't know I wonder if G talked about that last night. Damn.
Damn. Yeah, I don't know.
I should have watched that after. I had to go to bed, man. I was exhausted. All right, so there you have it.
Andreessen thing ain't great. I'll say that. Did you see I don't know if you saw the follow-up Barry Weiss. There was an interview with Barry Weiss, or she she had a meeting with CBS News and kind of laid out what their new vision was going to be. I can pull it up if you want, but it's important to remember that Mark Andreessen was the person who funded Barry Weiss's the Free Press. And Andreessen seems like kind of the uniparty left version of Peter Thiel on quote unquote the right. And so you have like these media operations flowing out from both of them. And if that doesn't creep you out, I don't know what would.
Yeah, I don't know. Again, you know, when you're, I was thinking about this earlier because the Bilderberg thing is, you know, concerning. You know, anything tied to Stanford, I'm not a huge fan of. I have a very sour taste with Stanford after the ISAC and everything else that we witnessed during COVID and the 2020 election and the censorship, all originating at Stanford. I mean, it's just, you know, historically college institutions. But, you know, to get a Fed chair, you're going to have people that dabble in those. Morgan Stanley, Bear Stearns, you know, all those organizations, this is where they come from. I don't think there's an infrastructure set up yet to parallel that in the so-called, you know, America First, you know, kind of populist regime. Like we don't have that infrastructure. You know, that is still the globalist kind of infrastructure. So I guess somebody that embraces Bitcoin would be, you know, somebody, I don't know, an ally, I would say. Again.
Yeah, I mean, it's all information among other information to me. You know, he said that Bitcoin can be used for good or evil. So, I mean, there's an intent behind it. And the people who want to use it for evil are going to say good things about it too.
Right.
So that's not always the kind of cipher that we're led to believe it is. As for Stanford and some of these other institutions, you know, anybody who is prominent in any of these related fields, unless you're going to bring someone from kind of out of the arena, like someone from private business or whatever, into a system like the Fed and like the banking infrastructure, you're going to have a lot of bad connections in their past because there are only bad connections. And that's one of the hazards with something that we kind of end up falling into often online, which is playing guilt by association games with whatever connections we can find in a person's past. So I think you have to, it's good to be cognizant of all those things. And I think that we should spread those things around, let people know, hey, here's the history, but the history of connections is not decisive.
Right. I agree with that. Again, and I'm, this is well outside of my knowledge. So I'm going with the discernment of President Trump on this. He had some good candidates that he chose, and this is the one that was the ultimate victor. So let's jump into this story here. Here we go again from Fox News. 7 Republicans join Democrats to block major government funding package as shutdown looms. And just to show you how quickly this actually moved along, I understand that this is old news already. Chuck Schumer and his caucus made it no secret that they would obstruct the government funding process, demanding that Republicans strip DHS funding bill from the 6-bill package. This is interesting, though, but the defection of 7 GOP lawmakers, Senator Ted Budd, Ron Johnson, Mike Lee, Ashley Moody, Rand Paul, Rick Scott, and Tommy Tuberville, was an unexpected development. I thought that was fascinating that you have the 2 Florida senators, Scott and Moody, Ron Johnson, Mike Lee, and Tuberville. I mean, Rand Paul, you kind of expect that, but
Ted Budd was a guy that Donald Trump talked up for at great length before his election too. So that I think that name's just as interesting as the others.
Well, so initially, I mean, I thought of this and I'm like, oh, they're, not, I don't want to say betraying, but they're, going against the grain here. But then I thought about it and I was like, we probably would have voted against this.
Of course.
Funding DHS. Yeah. So I look at this as actually, people, Fox News and the normies out there that watch Fox News every day are going to look at this and say, oh, these guys are backstabbers. They're actually constitutionalists, and they actually understand that DHS it's run its course, right?
Yeah. And it also might be possible that this is exactly what Donald Trump wants them to do.
Exactly.
I mean, getting rid of John and I talked about this at some length, so I don't need to rehash it. But DHS was set up in the aftermath of 9/11 and the Patriot Act and the rest of it. And it has taken a number of federal agencies and put them all under the DHS umbrella. The Department of Homeland Security, I have to wonder what homeland they're referring to. And it seems to me that it's the totality of the empire, because we have DHS, we have people from DHS or offices or whatever set up in something like 75 different countries. Yeah. It is a construct of the global regime, now deeply embedded at the cabinet level in the American federal government. And I can't remember who it was talking about the size of the law enforcement agency that DHS actually is, but they have like 70,000 people, 70,000 law enforcement officers in DHS. So we essentially have a globalist federal army that's installing the global security state in the United States of America. And they have the technology aspects. They have the emergency response aspects. Their authorities are essentially, I don't want to say unlimited, that's overboard, but they are expanded in many ways due to the state of emergency that we are constantly under. And so, yeah, DHS has to go. Sooner or later, it has to go. And like you said earlier, if you want to take organizations like ICE, if we decide that that's something we need, then that can be moved under the Department of War or something else. But we do not need the Department of Homeland Security. And there's nothing that the Department of Homeland Security has done well in the 20 plus years that it's been around. We don't actually need it. The immigration problem has gotten worse while DHS has existed and it has been running immigration. So I don't see any cause for keeping them around. And the defunding of DHS seems like it might be the point of all of the weird ops that we've seen over the last few weeks.
I mean, you've already got Border Patrol. That's the immigration aspect. You've got the Coast Guard. That's the customs aspect. I mean, do you need internal? Sure, you need internal customs for airfare and stuff like that, but you got TSA for that. I mean, it's really an inadequate organization. And like you said, we fact checked this because I mentioned the same thing. I think it's 75. They have 75 kind of substations throughout the globe. I think it was 90 I think they have like 90 consulate offices. The expansion of DHS is not Homeland. So yeah, you're spot on. So staying on the bill thing here, NBC News, an hour after all that, Trump strikes deal with Democrats in government shutdown funding fight. Trump and Senate Democrats struck a deal to avert a prolonged shutdown for most of the federal government. The agreement would fund all of the government except for DHS through September. DHS would operate on a 2-week stopgap bill in order to buy time and negotiate changes sought by the Democrats. Funding will temporarily lapse for multiple agencies, starting at 12:01 a.m. on Saturday. But if the deal passes both chambers, the impact is expected to be minimal since federal employees don't work on weekends. That's literally written. I didn't make that up, although it's true. Trump on Truth Social wrote, quote, Republicans and Democrats in Congress have come together to the vast majority of the government funded until September, while at the same time providing an extension to the Department of Homeland Security. Hopefully, both Republicans and Democrats will give a very much needed bipartisan yes vote. The agreement came together just hours after the Senate rejected a sweeping $1.2 trillion funding package that the House passed last week. That legislation bundled all 6 funding bills together, including funding for DHS. The Senate vote was 45-55 with 8 Republicans. So I don't know who the 8th one is, but I think there were 7 in that last article. 8 Republicans joining all Democrats in voting no, far short of the 60 votes needed to defeat a filibuster. Cut myself out there. So I'm I said earlier, Chris, when we started covering, kind of the buildup to this funding bill, that it was a breath of fresh air that we're finally getting at least somewhat, where it's not a continuing resolution, right? We're kind of getting broken up funding bills. It's still not single line appropriations like we've been promised, but it's a movement in the right direction. And they had an opportunity here. There was a lot of talk about putting these all back together in a continuing resolution in order to get this done. And they actually resisted that. So that's a small victory, I guess.
Yeah, I'm down with all that. Some people in the chat are saying that this shutdown leverage is going to be used to pass the SAVE Act, or now we have the new Mega Act. I mean, that's ridiculous. What are those acts supposed to do? They're not going to make our elections real. That's clearly not what's happening.
I wrote about the Mega Act, the Make Elections Great Again Act, when we were in Vegas, Gart. I had gotten, yeah. Sorry, I have having my AC installed. And so they were just drilling in the wall right next to the studio.
I was like, what happened? Am I supposed to be picking up on a little
No.
Here?
So I covered that Mega Act, and the some of the individuals, I got word, are not going full bore behind it anymore. It would have essentially, man, I'm not prepared. I'm going to talk about this on Why We Vote tonight, so stay tuned for that. I have to review it, but it was essentially going back to hand-marked, hand-counted paper ballots, but it's been tweaked a little bit here and there. So I haven't heard the Mega Act. I did see Rick Scott say that that they're going to use the SAVE Act as a bargaining chip, or trying to get the, to get this funding bill passed for DHS. So we'll see about that. I was not aware of that. Did you know any more about that, or
No.
Okay. All right. Well, let's jump into this story here. We'll talk a little geopolitics here for a moment. I'm curious to get your take. This is going to segue into the Board of Peace, because they're literally melting down over this idea. From Just the News, United Kingdom's latest NATO ally to court China while retreating on security. Keir Starmer traveled to China this week to reset icy relations with the communist power, following in the footsteps of Canada, which recently signed its own trade deal. The UK joins a growing train of U.S. allies seeking closer commercial ties with Beijing, pushing back against President Trump's trade policies and confrontations over security issues. These moves potentially set Britain's Liberal government on a collision course with President Trump, who, while open to a trade deal himself with Beijing, has aggressively pursued reducing Chinese influence and power, principally in the Western Hemisphere and among allies. #Don Road Doctrine. Starmer believes a middle way is possible. He aims to boost his country's economic relationship with China and the United States at the same time. But jump down here a little bit and say it may be difficult for the countries to scale up economic relations with China, given the country is currently facing an overcapacity crisis. Its industrial and manufacturing sectors are currently producing far more goods than its domestic economy and trading partners can absorb. This imbalance has even spurred European countries to consider higher tariffs on China to prevent dumping in their markets. When Canada signed its new trade agreement with China last week, U.S. Secretary Howard Lutnick called the idea that China would be able to increase imports from Canada, quote, the silliest thing I've ever seen. Though Canada is far more dependent on the U.S. trade than the U.K., it is still unlikely that London can significantly boost its own exports to China, given the overcapacity crisis, raising questions about how expanding economic ties would benefit Britain. All right, a lot of reading there to basically say China is over-leveraged. They're making way too much shit. And nobody's buying it. And so the idea that China is somehow going to make trade deals with Canada, Britain, other, allies of the United States, and be able to export goods to them, and those countries be able to export their goods to China is absurd. And I think, I don't know, we'll get into the Board of Peace here in a moment, but I think China maybe is trying to fill a void. I don't know. But
yeah, could be something else is actually just going on. I mean, it seems, I think the parallel between what we saw last week with Mark Carney and what we're seeing this week with Keir Starmer is, of course, relevant. And Canada and the UK are part of the same global empire, or historically have been. And so that empire, as it breaks apart, maybe these countries are trying to set up their own individual trade relations with places like China. That would make total sense in the scope of the rest of the pattern that we've seen. The United States is having is trying to create bilateral trade agreements rather than operating under this top-down control of the global system. And so you would expect other nations, as that global system breaks apart, to be setting up their own relationships. I don't think that this is, a lot of this is premised on the idea that China is this great adversary of ours. And so there is some threat to the United States if Canada and the UK talk to China. Well, from the global regime perspective, from the perspective of that top-down centralized control system, that is a threat to them. Certainly not a threat to MAGA, to America First, to the way we see the world starting to unfold and change. So, the media system at large is going to present that as a threat, because to them it is.
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt that, if you do buy into the sovereign alliance concept and theory there, what we've seen, the pushback, and we'll get into it right here in a second with the Board of Peace, the pushback you've seen from the globalist regime, which, London bankers, which in effect goes over to Carney in Canada, they would be pushing back against the United States for even introducing the concept of being able to subvert the United Nations and move on from that. And you got to fill that void. So, China could be filling the void that the United States, they think, and I don't know if it's going to happen or not, but, China's an opportunistic country. Don't kid yourself. I mean, if there is that void that's created by these tariff increases from the United States in trade with these countries, China will gladly slide in there and try and dump their goods in there. But like they said, like Lutnick said, and he warned of this, it's absurd to think that you're somehow going to balance your trade by exporting to China. It's just not going to happen, right? China has everything we make, they make cheaper. Everything. Yeah. They just buy our shit, reverse engineer it and make it themselves for a fraction of the price. So yeah, that brings me into this article here from the Associated Press. And this is a little bit of reading. I actually was going to cover this on SitRep last night, but we kind of got away from that idea. President Donald Trump's latest attempt to sidestep the UN through his Board of Peace appears to have inadvertently backfired after major world powers rejected U.S. aspirations for it to have a larger international mandate beyond the Gaza ceasefire and recommitted their support to the over 80-year-old global institution. I love this article so much. They don't even see the fourth turning is upon us. The high is coming. The board, to be chaired by Trump, was originally envisioned as a small group of world leaders overseeing his plan for Gaza's future, but Republican president's ambitions have expanded to envisioning the board as a mediator of worldwide conflicts, not a very subtle attempt to eclipse the Security Council, which is charged with ensuring international peace and security. They've done a great job at it. President Trump comes in and ends 8 wars, And what have they done? Jack and shit. If you want to jump in at any time, just
and then they also have the UN peacekeeping forces as well that have done nothing but bad things. And John and I did talk about this, so I don't want to go too deep into it again. But yes, this is the global control system once again, and these conflicts that Trump is resolving are conflicts that the global regime has created in their attempts to control every country in the world and subdue all the people in all those territories to this same system. And so that's largely failed. And in these particular instances where they were trying to take, they often call them civil wars or wars between neighboring countries that maybe used to be the same people. Donald Trump resolves those by removing the global regime element and their attempts at control and coercion within those countries. So you certainly don't need to bring that element back in, invite it back in by having the UN Security Council or the other levers of the UN involved in those situations. The entire point is getting them out.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think President Trump would have embarked on this endeavor unless it was already either, art of the deal, go high and settle somewhere in the middle, or he already knew that this was going to come to fruition in some form or fashion, or a realignment, a complete and total realignment. Reading on, it says, quote, "In my opinion, the basic responsibility for international peace and security lies with the UN, lies with the Security Council," says Secretary General Antonio Guterres on Thursday. Quote, "Only the Security Council can adopt decisions binding on all." Just listen to that. I mean, who the hell do you think you are? Only the Security Council can adopt decisions binding on all. Binding by who? Who?
Well, that's the thing. They need an enforcement mechanism, and the enforcement mechanism is the United States military, which they no longer have access to. So they don't have an enforcement mechanism. It's binding only through international law and the International Court of Justice, which means there's nothing.
How many warrants have we seen for the International Court? I think Netanyahu has warrants. I think Putin has warrants. I think President Trump probably has warrants somewhere. Yeah, real effective body, guys. Real effective body. Yeah, so only the Security Council can adopt decisions binding on all, and no other body or other coalition can legally be required to have all member states comply with decisions on peace and security. That's the UN Secretary General. Quote, "The U.S. rollout of the much broader Board of Peace Charter turned the whole exercise into a liability," according to the International Crisis Group's Richard Gowan, a UN watcher and program director.
So hold on a second. You skipped over one of the best parts right there. The International Crisis Group's Richard Gowan. The International Crisis Group is that global think tank that, wrote that report on Venezuela back on March 11th, 2020, that I've cited numerous times. The International Crisis Group has, as members of its board, I think the chairman of the board is Mark Malloch Brown. It has George and Alexander Soros, a number of members of the deep state, former State Department people, similar people from similar roles from all around the world. And it sponsors, well, by the way, it also has Scott Bessent. And its sponsors are global energy companies, global banks, etc. So that's quite a group that he's working with, and they have a particular perspective. The perspective is what to tell donors and philanthropists about where to put their money in order to further implement the global regime agenda.
Yes. I wanted to finish the quote. I was going to get to that,
sorry.
but not nearly in as much detail as you. not nearly. Quote, "Countries that wanted to sign on to help Gaza saw the board turning into a Trump fan club. That was not appealing. If Trump had kept the focus on the board solely on Gaza, more states, including some more Europeans, would have signed up." Goes on to say, the four other veto-wielding members of the Security Council, China, France, Russia, and the UK, have refused or have not indicated whether they would join Trump's board, as have economic powers such as Japan and Germany. Keir Starmer, who at the time had not responded to the Trump Board of Peace invitation, met with Guterres in London and reiterated, quote, "the UK's enduring support for the UN and their international rules-based system," according to the statement. Starmer emphasized the UN's, quote, pivotal role in tackling global problems which shape lives in the UK and all over the world. The United Kingdom later declined to join the board. France, Spain, and Slovenia declined to join Trump's offer by mentioning its overlapping and potentially conflicting agenda with the United Nations. So we're done with the globalists, the European Union, those countries there. Most of them, I don't think any of them have joined yet. I think Italy's considering it. Germany's considering it. I don't think any of them have actually joined yet. It seems like it's most of the Arab nations that are jumping on thus far. I personally still think Russia and China are going to join at some point. Russia's already committed to helping fund the Gaza aspect of it, but hasn't committed to joining the Board of Peace as a whole. Yeah, your take?
I was just looking to see the list.
Well, you look up the list, and I'll finish up with the foes part. The part here, America's adversaries have also shunned the board. Quote, no single country could dictate terms based on its power, and a winner-takes-all approach is unacceptable, said China's UN ambassador Fu Kong at a Security Council meeting. He called for the United Nations to be strengthened, not weakened, and said the Security Council's status and role are irreplaceable. So far, some 26 of 60 countries invited have joined the board. 9 European countries have declined. India did not attend Trump's signing ceremony at the World Economic Forum last week, but is reportedly still deciding what to do. Trump revoked the invitation to Mark Carney, Canada's prime minister. Quote, it's hardly surprising. And this is from Louis Charbonneau, the UN director for Human Rights Watch. The organization that's been telling us how awful Venezuela and every other country that we've sanctioned and driven into the ground before a color revolution. It's hardly surprising that very few governments want to join Trump's wannabe UN, which so far looks more like a pay-to-play club of human rights abusers and war crime suspects than a serious international organization. Instead of handing Trump $1 billion check to join his Board of Peace, governments should work on strengthening the UN. And then Gowan, the crisis group guy, said their focus could be a way to, quote, get a foothold in discussions at Gaza at the start, as Trump's ceasefire plan has already faced several setbacks. I remain unconvinced that this is a real long-term threat to the UN.
And he would have to say that sort of thing. What are they going to do? Admit that the UN is gone belly up, and we're seeing the coming apart of these international institutions? That's not going to be admitted. It's funny that he's talking that the Human Rights Watch guy is talking about the identity of these people as the war criminals and the rest of it. Like, look at what your institution has done. And he's talking about strengthening the UN. Well, you're kind of admitting that the UN is so weak at this point that Donald Trump can propose a Board of Peace and essentially take your power away. So what influence do you really have?
I said when we first started talking about this, when everybody started melting down about it during the World Economic Forum at Davos, is we're in the fourth turning. Ash and I talked about this when we were covering the book. We've gone through the crisis. We're coming out of the crisis being a culmination of 9/11, this saculum that we just came out of, 9/11, OIF, OEF, the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq, followed by COVID, stolen election. All of that took place in a 20-year period, right? And I think we're coming out of it. And it's spot on with Strauss and Howe in that book. It is literally almost 20 years to the day that all of that came to fruition, from 9/11 all the way to the kind of ending of the COVID crisis. Now with the reelection of President Trump and this movement into the direction of the quote unquote golden age, it's all literally mapped out in that book, just the perpetual cycle. And I said when we were reading that book, I said, I wouldn't be surprised if you see a replacement for the United Nations. I think this was early on in Trump's second term. I got to look at the dates when we covered that book, but
third term.
Or third term.
Hey, he said it last week.
Did you see yesterday? He was talking about something, and he said, in a couple of years when I'm out of here, and he was like, I hate to do it. I hate to leave, or something like that. I was listening to press conference yesterday, and that's the first time I've ever heard him kind of, capitulate to the fourth term idea.
I feel like he kind of says both things pretty regularly. I would say that I've heard him make that kind of framing before, but
okay. Well, I mean, I also think that if the Board of Peace does come to fruition the way that I think it will, as a replacement with actual clout, for the United Nations, his role as the irrevocable leader of that organization until he resigns would essentially be, a leadership role for the entire body. And I don't know how I feel about even if it's him, rooting on a globalist overlord. But if anybody was going to do it,
I would just say, and this is speculation, this is my impressions of the situation. The UN kind of serves as a global governing body, and I don't think that's what he's setting the Board of Peace up to do. It's just kind of a conflict resolution body where the superpowers will be there, and also these other small nations who favor sovereign existence would be part of it as well. And that would be kind of an anti-UN, right? The globalists want to bring in the global system. The Board of Peace prevents that system from being brought in, and it keeps stable conditions on the ground in these nations where the UN or the global system would want to install their way of doing things. So hopefully that's what it is. That's my optimistic take on it. I don't want to just assume that it's going to be another global governing body, but the chances of things being steered in that direction, that chance is always there. And it's just kind of a natural progression of things based on the incentives that, and this is a deeper discussion, but that scientific materialists pursue in the material realm. If people are pursuing wealth, status, power, material excess because they are focused on doing well in this earthly realm, that's always going to eventually lead some people to attempt to exploit others so that they can get more of other people's stuff. That game's always going to be played. And so, it's not an easy game to thwart, obviously, but the incentive structure itself in materialism leads organizations that already have a centralizing aspect to further centralize and funnel more power to that centralized entity. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. It does. I would be really curious to go back and look historically, because, when we see history, we see things through a very, very, very narrow focus. It is exactly what they want us to see when it comes to historical. And you go back and, talking about the turnings and the transition from a crisis back into a new high, from a fourth turning back into a first turning. And go back to the American Revolution, right? And we're told that the founding fathers, the framers of the Constitution, they all got together and they all sat down in Philadelphia and put together this document, and it was beautiful and it's the best thing ever. But if you actually go back, like I know you have extensively, way more so than I have, there was a lot of turmoil in there. A lot of people left. There were fights. It was not like some joyous moment where everybody got together and was in agreement. And I would think, and I haven't looked at this, and this is why I'm bringing this up, because it's something I would like to go and actually do some in-depth research on. How was the United Nations coming to fruition? Like, how much chaos was there around the United Nations? How much resistance was there, pushback? Were nations up in arms about the concept of this? The way that we're seeing the AP presenting the UN now to the Board of Peace. Was there some sort of, kind of the yin to the yang in the creation of the United Nations? I want to see, because right now you look at this and you're like, for a normie reading the Associated Press right there, they're saying, oh, President Trump is getting his ass kicked, right? The UK is kicking his ass. They're not going to join. Nobody in Europe wants to join. If Europe doesn't want to join, this has to be an inherently bad thing. And then they highlight the countries that are joining, like Qatar, Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, Israel. Like, they throw these countries in there. No, China and Russia don't even want to join. So it's kind of like they're seeding this idea in everybody's head that this is something that nobody wants. And I'm wondering if we had the same thing with the United Nations back in, 1945 or something.
Well, I would just suggest that the global media apparatus was on different sides in those two instances, right? They're pushing forward the global governance body back in the formation of the UN, coming out of the League of Nations, and this is all post World War II stuff, where the entire point was globalizing. So the media would be approaching these things from opposite directions. The media control system has been the same for those 80 years. And I would say that would be the major difference. And the people's approval of the body or rejection of the body would be a function of the success that the media would have in their messaging campaigns.
All right. So October of 1945, which was 3 years after the OSS and 2 years before the CIA. Coincidental. All right. So yeah, that's just something I want to go back and look at for my own, I'll probably talk about it at some point if there's anything, if I find anything interesting, but I'll bet you there was a lot of resistance to the forming of the United Nations. But let's jump back into the United States here. We got a press conference yesterday with Tom Homan out in Minneapolis, and a couple clips here from this. This one's the narrative that was seeded over the last couple of days. We've covered several articles about this, about people freaking out about the drawdown, and you have the state senator down here in Florida and Miami that's freaking out because Trump is arresting too many illegals. Yeah, I don't know if you saw that or not. I was all on board with Trump, but now he's ripping people out of their homes and their cars, and yeah. So here's Tom Homan talking about that, kind of.
This is common sense cooperation that allows us to draw down on the number of people we have here. Yes, I said it. Draw down the number of people here. Because we have the efficiency and safety of the jails and the prison. Matter of fact, I have staff from CBP and from ICE working on a draw-down plan. What does that look like based on the cooperation? What does that look like based on how many targets we have less to find?
Okay, so there you have Holman talking about the drawdown. I think everybody knew the drawdown was coming. And by a drawdown, it's not, they're not abandoning it. They just don't need. So in the next clip, well, let me see. I should probably just play the next clip because this will tell you why there's going to be a drawdown. Yeah, let me play this first.
To be clear, we did not agree with Minnesota state and local officials that they would be involved in immigration enforcement. I didn't ask them to be immigration officers. I'm asking them to be cops working with the cops to help us take criminal aliens off the street. What we did agree upon is not to release public safety arrests back in the community, and they could be lawfully transferred to ICE. I'll speak more about that. I will highlight that the Minnesota State Prison System under the Department of Corrections have been honoring ICE detainers. And we appreciate that important collaboration, and we're going to expand upon that. That decision has made Minnesota safer.
All right. So Holman goes out there and negotiates with Frey, Walls, Ellison, all the Minnesotans. You got to say with that hiccup at the end with the Minnesotans. And now we've got, I guess, local law enforcement, state law enforcement in Minnesota that's going to agree to work with federal agents, not to arrest the people, but I guess kind of like perimeter, right? They're like the security, right? They're the guys that are going to go out there and make sure that, while ICE is doing their operations, they're not overrun by, these mobs of people and everything else. I think it's all kind of, I think a lot of it's blown out of proportion. You take a couple isolated incidents and put them out there on repeat, and it makes it seem like this is far worse than it actually is going on out there. The Ileana Garcia, the woman yesterday, I was talking about this. She's a state senator from down in Miami, very, very large immigrant population down there. And I don't know, why she came out and said what she said. It's kind of dumb, and it feeds the narrative on the left that, ICE is out of control and all this other stuff, which, I think we go back to what we were talking about earlier with DHS and DHS being an unconstitutional entity as a whole. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I wonder where the funding of DHS fits into the drawdown picture. if you know that your funding is going to freeze, and you can correct me, by the way, if that would remain in place while the operation is carried out, maybe through some backup funding source or whatever. But these issues all seem to be kind of converging on the same underlying situation, which is that the DHS funding might be canceled. If that itself would cause a drawdown, well, then you might see stuff like this indicating that a drawdown is planned prior to the funding issue being triggered. So I think that that's an interesting element of kind of the narrative progression here.
I just don't think that this is any different than what we've seen in some of the other places like Los Angeles, Chicago, Oregon. You know, this is how it goes. You go in there with shock and awe, and then you pull back. And this is why I think Bovino was in there. I think Bovino was in there as the bad cop, you know, the guy that's the rough guy, you know, the roughneck that's going to come in there and just shake you down and get all the worst of the worst out and just round them up, set the operational tempo. And then you have Holman to come in there as the quote unquote voice of reason, right? The guy that's supposed to calm things down and bring it back to civility and conduct the operations the way they're supposed to. And you saw, you know, there's capitulation on both sides here, right? The drawdown is definitely going to be viewed as a victory for the quote unquote left and for these anti-ICE protesters. They're going to look at this as, hey, we were victorious. But you're also going to see, you know, the administration saying we were victorious because we've now got law enforcement agreeing to cooperate. We've seen over the last month or so, law enforcement has, you know, considerably pushed back against these operations, saying we're not going to, you know, some of them, we're not going to back this up. Frey was out there saying, get the fuck out, you know, all that kind of stuff. And now they're saying, hey, we'll work with you. And not only will we work with you, but if we bring an illegal into our prison system, we'll alert you and you guys can come and deal with it. I think that's a win for them.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's going to be perceived that way.
Right. So both sides, I think, are taking a victory here. And, you know, that's the difficult part because I'm kind of, you know, I think, you know, outside of how they're doing it, I think I would agree with the anti-DHS crowd here, you know, pushing back against that. It's still not popular with some people. They'll be like, oh, you're a leftist. No. Just realize that it's run its course.
That stuff is so silly, though, because and many of the people who make that complaint, you know, on Twitter and elsewhere will say things about the uniparty. Right. And that inconsistency has to be resolved. Like, if you are going to talk about the uniparty, you can't turn around 5 minutes later and talk about Democrats and the left. And you're a leftist if you disagree with what our side of the uniparty is doing. What in the world could that possibly mean? That would be just a content-free idea. They're just saying the things that they have heard on the internet, not realizing that the things they're saying are totally contradictory. So, you know, if the uniparty is a real thing, if we are going to accept that the uniparty is a real thing, then we need to actually apply that to our thinking. And if we're not doing that, then what's the point of talking about the uniparty in the first place? It's like it's just a trendy thing to talk about, but not real. I don't understand how people can proceed that way just intellectually. It's just, I mean, a lot of people don't even realize they're doing it, which is fine. And I think that is a solvable problem. But other people just go along with what the internet is saying, and they want to make these points because these are like the trendy points to make. You got to actually apply it to your thinking.
Yeah. And then the last clip I want to play from that press conference, and I love this, addressing the quote unquote color revolution in Minneapolis.
Well, first of all, about the organization and the funding of the attacks on ICE. I'm not going to answer a lot about that because I'm not going to show our hand, but they'll be held accountable. Justice is coming. Again, we got to all remember why the questions we've seen and why we're here. What started this? 4 years of an open border where millions of people are in this country unvetted. Remember, let's not forget, for 4 years, we were told the border is secure. 4 years, we were told the border is secure. And we all knew it wasn't. And I want this to be a positive thing we're doing here today. I also want to remember the politicians are continually attacking us. Where were they the last 4 years? when the number of women and children sex trafficking went all-time high? Where were they when 250,000 Americans died from fentanyl coming across the border? Where were they when women and children are dying making that journey? Where were they where over 4,000 aliens making that journey died? Historic record. Where were they? Not a word. Now we're just trying to respond to what happened the last 4 years and keeping this country safe. And we're arresting a lot of public safety threats, take them off the streets, which make this country safer.
All right, we can he's going to do the heartfelt thing there. And that's kind of interesting to see him. He's always kind of been like the bona fide badass that, just doesn't, whatever. I think the next time he does a press conference like this, he needs to come out wearing that medal that Obama gave him.
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be epic? That would just be the greatest.
I am totally on board with the idea that the illegal aliens need to be removed from the country. I do not believe in birthright citizenship. I am principally as far right as you can be about many of these issues. Gosh, I just lost my train of thought completely on that.
The mass deportations you were going down.
Yes, but there was something about Homan's comments that I lost in my setup to that response. Let's continue. It'll come back to me.
All right. Well, we'll take a quick break here and
perfect.
Get a couple sponsors. I actually kind of screwed up this morning, so I was reading the wrong run sheet. So yeah, it happens to the best of us. Let's talk about mypillow.com.
It's finally here, our second annual mega sale. This sale only comes around once a year, so take advantage of the best offers ever while you can. For example, save 50% on our Giza Dream bed sheets as low as $29.98. And for the first time ever on TV, MyPillow mattresses and MyPillow mattress toppers as low as $99.98. And you save 50% on our Lux Pure 6-piece towel sets. Regular $69.98, now only $39.98. And our best-selling standard MyPillows, regular $49.98, on sale for $17.98. Wait on it, mega sale, only $14.98. So go to mypillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use this promo code to take advantage of our second annual mega sale. But wait, there's more. To make the mega sale even more special, when you order right now, your order's going to ship absolutely free.
All right, mypillow.com, promo code Badlands. I'm getting flack from John in the chat. There we go. And then let's also talk about the next segment because I haven't even uploaded the.
Well, I remembered what I was while that's going. I just remembered what I was going to say.
Please indulge us.
So the mass illegal immigration problem he's referring to has been ongoing for far longer than 4 years, and DHS has been at the forefront of that immigration problem for the last 2 decades. So yeah, some of that just comes off as not entirely, I don't know, sincere.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's a reason that, President Trump kept him on after the Obama, I don't know. I didn't know until maybe a month ago. I know a lot of people were shocked, that this kind of got put out there that, he got the medal. They're saying that he was the director of ICE. He wasn't the director. I think he was like the executing, I don't know, something or other. But I think there's a reason that Trump has Homan in that position, and he's not, a sworn or not sworn, but like a appointment. It's a made up position, right? Homan is not. He's a border czar. Like he's not an official position. He's not ICE director. He's not the Border Patrol director. He's not the director of. He's just. Trump said, "Here, you take care of all this. You're overseeing the immigration operations as a whole." And I think there's a reason that he's in that position, but I don't know. We'll see. I did get the next sponsor lined up, and then we'll get into maybe one of the coolest meltdowns I've seen on CNN. I think this is absolutely hilarious, but let's talk about the Sovereign Alliance.
What is the Sovereign Alliance? The Sovereign Alliance are a collection of leaders and countries that are aligned not in the vision for their countries, but against a vision that has been thrust upon them. I believe that the Sovereign Alliance is less a battle for something and more a battle against something. They are against globalism, collectivism. They are against the rules-based international order.
Sovereign Alliance, the latest addition to Badlands Rise merch, available now at badlandsmedia.tv/rise.
I love that ad. That's such a cool ad. Rise Attire, man, you guys put together some great ads. Check them out. I'm wearing my Cywar hoodie right now as we speak.
Yeah, I'm doing the Rise today as well.
Yeah, still waiting for a sit rep gear. Come on, guys.
Yeah.
You can market that to anybody, even if they don't participate in Badlandia. All right, guys, listen up. One more sponsor. We all know the American healthcare system is broken, especially when it comes to weight loss. Big Pharma wants you to pay $1,500 a month for GLP-1 medications like Ozempic or Wegovy, while insurance companies just look for reasons to say no. Stop playing their game. You need to check out MedVi. They've democratized access to the same life-changing metabolic science. We're talking doctor-prescribed semaglutide and tirzepatide, starting at just $179 for your first month. There is no insurance required. It's 100% online process with 24/7 doctor support and zero hidden fees. Over 100,000 patients have already joined MedVi to fix their metabolism and lose the weight for good. They even offer a money-back guarantee because they know their program works. Look at the QR code on your screen right now. Click the pinned link in the chat. Take 2-minute assessment to see if you qualify. Stop waiting for the system to help you. Take control with MedVi today. That's crazy how cheap prescription drugs can be if you're uninsured, which is funny because the people that can afford that, to pay out of pocket are the people that are buying the insurance.
Right.
Like,
yeah. Insurance is a scam, and it's not necessary. You can just pay in cash for the medications and for the medical services as well.
Right. And it's the rich people that buy health insurance that can afford it much cheaper. And, just take 10% of what you would pay in your health insurance, put it into a savings account, put it into Bitcoin, and then pay for your services as they come up. It's crazy. Yeah. All right. So I want to play this clip here. I thought this was hilarious. The only thing I think that would have been better about this if it was Scott Jennings perhaps pushing back and not Kevin Leary, but is it Leary or O'Leary? I can never remember.
I think it's O'Leary.
O'Leary. Yeah. Yeah. Check this out as she calls ICE. Well, I'll just play it.
Furthermore, there's a reason why we have not seen a research.
Oh, maybe not on 1.5 speed. Kind of sounds crazy that way. Let's try that again.
Furthermore, there's a reason why we have not seen a resurgence of the Proud Boys. And that is because I believe a lot of them are likely made ICE officers. Again, I've said this on the show before. I've not seen any deep dive reporting into who these people are, but they certainly adopt a lot of the ideology, a lot of the tactics, a lot of the violent tactics, a lot of the wearing masks. And it sounds a lot like their founder, what they initially put out. And so because Stephen Miller backtracks, I don't really care. I wonder about all the incidents that are not caught on videotape. I wonder about all the people who are sitting in detention centers right now as we sit here, who are malnourished, who are without life-saving medication, children who have been kidnapped.
Did you just say ICE officers are militia?
Yes. Have you not been paying attention?
Yeah, I
they
think
certainly
you're
mirror
stretching
the
a little
Gestapo.
bit. That's very.
I don't think I'm stretching anything. I think we have seen
That's
what we have
wonderful.
not seen. What we have not seen are gang members committing violence. What we have seen are ICE agents
hold on 1 second.
kill people.
But Tiffany, you're saying that you're just making a supposition here. There's no concrete evidence.
You got to be careful. That's way
there was some supports. There
was some men and women serving the government.
We have seen white supremacist tattoos
risking their lives, serving the government,
risking their lives. They're taking lives.
You're calling them Proud Boy militia. Did you say that?
Well, I did not call them Proud Boy militia, but I think it's disgraceful that you're sitting here. I'm actually not, but I think that there are white supremacist tattoos on their
white supremacist federal officers.
Yeah, white supremacist
Okay,
federal officers.
Like, where are you going with this? Why would you say that?
I'm going with my eyes, ears, and logic. There have been multiple ICE agents who have white supremacist
men and women
tattoos
working
on
for
their
the
neck.
federal government, risking their lives, carrying out a mandate, and they're white supremacists?
Yes, and you're a member of a cult, so I don't expect you to have
Whoa.
I think the generalizations here are a bit of an overreach.
Yeah, and let's not make this one.
Go ahead.
No, I'm just amazed because everyone at the table like starts freaking out like, oh my gosh, people are saying things outside of like the polite boundaries that we have set up here at CNN. You're not allowed to say that, and you're not allowed to say that. It's hilarious.
I thought, Kevin O'Leary, it's like he kind of like let it play out for a minute. Do you remember last week there was a clip of Scott Jennings where they said, Trump is part of a major pedophile network, child trafficking network. And Scott Jennings is just like, really? You're going to let that slide? You're not going to fact check that? And he's like, well, I was going to say something. I think it might've been Jake Tapper. And he's like, well, I was going to say something after the fact or, something along those lines. Same thing there. Kevin O'Leary let them try and interrupt and said, wait. Now you're saying that Proud Boys, which is not a militia. It's literally a drinking group. It's kind of dumb, actually. Not that the Proud Boys are dumb, like to associate them as a militia is just so stupid. But you're now going to allow that to be said, and Kevin O'Leary just let them dig their grave and finally had to interrupt and be like, okay, come on. And she doubles down. Now they're white supremacists. I haven't seen any evidence of that whatsoever. I looked for evidence of that. I cannot find any evidence that there are ICE agents who are white supremacists and have white supremacist tattoos or whatever the hell that lady's talking about. That was one of the worst meltdowns I've seen. And CNN should be ashamed that they didn't immediately be like, okay, you can't talk about it. You can't talk about that. I don't like saying that, but like you're basing this off of absolutely nothing. Absolutely nothing.
Well, she probably saw people on the internet saying it and probably saw one picture with a tattoo that was kind of analyzed to be a white supremacist tattoo, regardless of whether it was or wasn't. And she probably thought she had a leg to stand on. I mean, that's how these conversations go at this point, which is, why they're so worthless.
Yeah. And then the best part, she turns around. You're in a cult. Okay.
Right. Yeah.
Quick update. That nurse guy down at the university, I think he's at the University of Miami, Jackson. I think he's down at Miami. He has been now terminated from that. He had his nursing license pulled. Attorney General James Utmeyer, effective today, Eric Martindale is no longer a registered nurse in Florida. Healthcare is not contingent on political beliefs, and we have zero tolerance for partisans who put politics above the ethical duty to treat patients with respect and dignity that they deserve. And he's the guy that said, I will not anesthetize any MAGA people. Like he said this publicly. I mean, I'm sure he's going to appeal this, free speech. You should be able to say whatever you want to say. Did he actually do it? Has he given somebody saline instead of anesthesia? And somebody thinks that they're going out for surgery and they get cut open and they feel every minute of it. Or what's the people that are like desensitized to it? Like it doesn't affect them. Like they go under, but they can feel everything. Oh, you never heard of this?
No.
Oh, bro.
It's horrifying though.
It's one of the most horrifying things I could ever imagine. Like they go out, like they completely out of it. They can't, move or whatever, but they can feel everything. Yeah, that would be horrifying. So just an update on that. Oh, the other one, I didn't know this, but the one from Virginia has already been fired. We talked about another one yesterday that was saying that people need to go out there and put, I can't remember what the drug was called. I think it's called like succinylinofoid or something like that. It's a temporary paralysis agent that they give you, intubating you so that your body, whatever. She was recommending putting that in needles and jabbing ICE agents with it, filling water guns with water that's been steeped with poison oak and poison ivy and spraying them in the face with it, and finding ICE agents on Tinder and dating them and sliding X-Lax into their drinks while you're on your date. And she has been fired as well. These people are fucking insane.
I can agree with that last part for sure.
All right. On to the New York Post here. Ghislaine Maxwell claims 25 Jeffrey Epstein accomplices reached a secret settlement after abuse allegations, according to court papers. A group of 25 alleged accomplices of dead people that Jeffrey Epstein, of dead pedophile Jeffrey Epstein, made quote unquote secret settlements with accusers, while 4 alleged co-conspirators were never charged. Maxwell revealed in court papers, quote, new evidence reveals that there were 25 men with which the plaintiff lawyers reached settlements that could equally be considered as co-conspirators, Maxwell wrote in her December filing. She filed this without lawyers, seeking to overturn her conviction. The filing also claims that 4 of the notorious financier's employees were mentioned in a non-prosecution agreement and in the sex trafficking indictment that Jeffrey faced before he killed himself. Now, we knew that the non-prosecution agreement, that was that's not new, but the 25 co-conspirators that reached settlements with victims is interesting. Quote, none of these men have been prosecuted and none have been revealed to Maxwell. So Maxwell apparently doesn't even know who they were. She would have called them as witnesses had she known, Maxwell wrote. If the jury had heard of the new evidence of the collusion between the plaintiff's lawyers and the government to conceal evidence, and if the jury had heard of the new evidence of the collusion between the plaintiff's lawyers and the government to conceal evidence and the prosecutorial misconduct, they would have never convicted her, or would not have convicted Maxwell. It's unclear whether the 25 men also reached deals with the feds. So that's the story right there. 25 people who apparently Maxwell doesn't even know who they are, and I don't buy that for a split second. But yeah, the Epstein persists.
Seems like Maxwell's going to get out at some point.
I think we've speculated on that she's going to become state's witness at some point, and that she probably already has. She goes from medium security to minimum security, and she's getting a mattress and a pillow, and she gets yard time now and all these benefits. It's very odd. Blanche goes down there and does the interview with her, releases portions of it. I think she's already a state's witness. I've said this for a long time. The freak out over the Epstein thing is because it's an ongoing investigation. You're not going to get a lot of this stuff that everybody's clamoring for right now. And you just gotta relax. Just relax, man. I don't know
might not get it ever.
Yeah, that's true too.
It might not exist, by the way.
Yeah. I mean,
stuff that people want. And I'm not saying it never existed and that he didn't do anything. I'm just saying, like, official government evidence that has been held and controlled by the bad guys for 10, 15, 20 years. The idea that we're just going to get all of that and then that'll be the decisive proof we need to know what has happened. I mean, that's nonsense. And I think that we're going to have another good example of that in the near term with some of this voting evidence. Is the evidence that comes out from Georgia, for instance, going to convince the people who have committed their last 5 years to saying that Donald Trump is making up the fact that the election was stolen? Is it going to convince them once they see evidence from Georgia that says that actually the election was not won by Joe Biden? No, it's not going to convince them. The idea that official documentation convinces people of things is wrong.
Well, yeah. So, I mean, it depends on the level, I think. And there is possibility that the election thing could come full circle, swing back the other way. Obviously the talking heads, the John Carls, who I called out yesterday, the John Ossoffs, who we're going to talk about here in a second, those people will never come around to it because they're complicit in it. They're benefactors of it. They have, been the quote unquote perpetrators of it. Or at least they've been conspirators in it. But like normie people, I think there is a possibility that some people
people in the middle who have remained in the middle for 5 years might swing toward our side with the evidence. Yeah, I would say that's potentially true, but then that would be a function of the mainstream media accepting this narrative into the mainstream storyline, like the public at large is being given a permission structure to understand that at least the presidential election in 2020 was somehow tainted. And if they go further than that, that's wonderful. But I think that that's what we should expect to happen. And they'll be making that move based on what the television has told them is now okay to say.
Yeah. Well, the television will never tell them it's okay to say some of the things that are true about this. You know, the segment I did on DPH on Wednesday will never make it to mainstream, even though everything in there is either in consideration as fact or has already been deemed factual, you know, by the quote unquote authorities. I can tell you I've researched it thoroughly, and everything that's been written there is factual. Now, could there be explanations for it? Yes, possibly, but they don't want to address that. And to me, that's an admission of guilt. The fact that they don't want to address that, and that they cover it up, and that they subvert the other side from being able, they obfuscate the other side from being able to articulate their points. Right. This is the hearing in the state election board with Charlene McGowan, where they literally did not let the complainants argue against what the Secretary of State said. This is the Secretary of State. You have to trust what they say. They are the authoritative source. That's what John Carl came on ABC yesterday or the day before, saying that the Secretary of State has already investigated this. Stop with this nonsense. You guys are lunatics. The Secretary of State's wrong. He's a benefactor of this. He benefited from this. His ass could go to prison if all this comes to fruition. And you're going to take his word over a non-invested party. So now here's the problem. And this is a point that you brought up. I saw you in the chat on Wednesday. If those middle people do come around to this idea that we've been right this whole time, they are now the most vulnerable people to embrace whatever is going to be thrown at them as an alternative, as a replacement. And if it's not what we've been advocating for the last 5 years, hand-marked paper ballots, precinct level, and all that stuff, they'll just buy into whatever the next system is. And that's why I think it's interesting that you brought up the Mega Act earlier in the show. I gotta dig into that a little bit.
Yeah, John was digging into it a little bit yesterday and said that a number of the changes don't even come about until next year. So they're not going to be part of the midterm cycle. And then you've got the SAVE Act and a big push for the SAVE Act to be passed. You know, if the elections are going to be, if the public at large is going to finally agree that there is something seriously wrong with the elections, and I don't expect that they're going to even be encouraged to get as far down that road as you have gone, or I have gone, or a number of other people have gone. If the public at large is going to accept that there's something wrong with the elections, what's the reaction going to be? Well, they're going to be introduced a new system. They're going to say, okay, yes, the elections are bad, but we need to keep having elections. And so here's the new system under which we can have elections. That is a glide path to getting the system to solve itself. It's going to present us a solution to the problems it's created. That solution will have all of the same loopholes as the problem that it's intended to fix, and we'll just keep marching forward. And this whole permission structure that is being built, including by people in the so-called truth community that are, telling people, hey, we've been telling you that our elections are fake. Let's pass the SAVE Act. Let's pass the Mega Act. This is what's going to fix the elections. That's not going to fix the elections. That's going to cement fake elections forever. And that is why they are doing it. That's why they're rolling it out on this timeline. And so participating in that as just joyfully clapping along and cheerleading as this 5-year-old story gets exposed as though it's new, that's a limited hangout. We are going to be cheering for a limited hangout. And then we're going to be applauding the system as it says it fixed itself, without holding anybody accountable, except for maybe some local election officials in Georgia or Arizona or somewhere else. And I think that is like the thing to avoid. If there's one thing that we have to avoid, it is that thing. And instead, we're being encouraged to celebrate it.
I agree. We haven't gotten to that. To be fair, we haven't gotten to that step yet.
I would love to be wrong. I would love to be wrong. Okay. I would love for the nation to be like, yes, there's something wrong with our elections. And for everybody to immediately say, we're not doing any more elections until we can resolve this problem and get an election system that the people can verify. It's totally transparent. There's no way that you can rig this thing. Let's push for that and no elections until then. And, if the federal government can't do anything, cool. The federal government's not really doing all that many things relative to the things that it can do, it is operating at a much lower capacity. And I think that we can see that pretty clearly. The Congress is not really passing laws, and that's a big deal. The Congress is not being deferred to for much of anything because the constitutional order, as we've been accustomed to seeing it, has already broken down and is not really in play. So, man, I don't know. I don't want to like keep going off about this, but we don't want to get to that point. There is a point that we can reach, and we should be refocused on local and state government. And, you know, I think that the federal system should revert back to the original Constitution, obviously, and the state system should as well. And these problems need to be solved locally, people getting together and deciding how are we going to make this thing work, and then those solutions kind of percolating up to the state level. And then if we're going to keep having a federal government, they percolate up to the federal level. But until that process actually happens, the idea that we're just going to accept a new system as like a fix because we need to win the midterms, that's surrender.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. The one thing that's kind of weird to me, and I would like to see this argued, and this just popped into my head, is and going back to the original Constitution, you know, pre Reconstruction, Article 1, Section 4, the election clause, is counterintuitive to the 14th Amendment, equal protection under the law. You know, I was reading, I think it's was it 2511, which is one of the charges that they brought the warrant for in Georgia, and it's a federal law that you can't defraud or whatever. I think it was that one where you can't. It takes into consideration the state's law. I think. Let me make sure. Crap. I'll talk about that on Why We Vote tonight. I'll save that for tonight's show. Let's jump into this story here from NBC News. Tulsi Gabbard under scrutiny for showing up at the FBI raid in Georgia election hub. Chris with the perfect segue, by the way. That was not planned. That set up from Epstein to the election. Trump, I love this meltdown. They are trying desperately, like the narrative, the full-blown shielding that's going out here. This isn't even shielding. This is an attack. This isn't defensive. This is an attack on Gabbard. Trump watched a live feed of the U.S. military operation that captured Venezuela President Nicolas Maduro. Where was Tulsi Gabbard? She was not in the room. Just 2 days earlier, she posted a photo of herself on a beach in Hawaii doing at sunset practicing yoga, that she appeared to be on vacation in the run-up to such a high-stakes, ultra-sensitive military operation seemed to underscore the extent to which she had been sidelined by the administration. I love the fact that they call it a high-stakes, ultra-sensitive military operation, but it was leaked to the press. Like,
maybe Tulsi was on a Venezuelan beach. Did they ever consider that?
Well, it was in Hawaii, and they're like, she's on vacation. Do they realize she lives in Hawaii?
Man.
Maybe not anymore, but she was back home. I don't know that that's vacation. But this was such a high-stakes, ultra-sensitive military operation that it was leaked by a contractor to the Washington Post, and people freaked out when they wanted to find out, you know, what exactly was leaked. But anyways, but there she was on Wednesday at an election center in Fulton County, Georgia, as FBI conducted a raid seeking ballots from the 2020 presidential election, which Trump has falsely claimed he won. Gabbard's presence baffled national security experts and raised questions about whether she is seeking her new relevancy in the eyes of a president who had soured on her. Quote, even if there was some criminal activity in the 2020 election in Georgia, despite repeated investigations that showed there was none, it's still a purely domestic problem, not one involving foreign nations, says a former national security official. Granted anonymity. I added that, but they don't tell you his name. So
right.
The director of national intelligence has nothing to do with this. Unless, you know, just perhaps, just an idea here, you don't know what the fuck you're talking about. And there's information that you're not privy to because there's something called classifications in information in our government. Unfortunately, and it might be classified. But yeah,
there also might be foreign elements. And I think that there's obviously really good reasons to believe that. It turns out that anything globalists do introduces a foreign element. So it doesn't matter if they are full-on American politicians. If they are globalists and pursuing a global agenda, the foreign element is already inside. And I think it's particularly interesting because Trump actually, and I don't take Trump's reposts to be anything close to the confirmation a lot of people think they are. Trump reposts all sorts of things, a variety of viewpoints, contradictory viewpoints, total nonsense, terrible boomer memes released by bot accounts on Truth Social. He reposts all sorts of ridiculous shit. But he reposted the other day stuff about Leonardo and Maria Zack and the rest of that with election interference out of Italy. So the idea that there are foreign elements and, you know, whatever you might think of that story is not the point here at all. And I'm not trying to cast aspersions on Maria Zack. I'm just saying he's already bringing up and introducing the idea that foreign elements could be involved in this process. So to see the director of national intelligence there, I don't think is any sort of controversy. If anything, it's just good television marketing to get more people to pay attention to the issue.
I would imagine that the director of national intelligence has some pretty competent people in cyber that work for her in technology fields. I would just speculate on that you know, she probably knows. But anyways, reading on, it says, asked about the rationale for having her visit to Georgia, a senior administration official said, quote, Director Gabbard has a pivotal role in election security and protecting the integrity of our elections against interference, including operations targeting voting systems, databases, and election infrastructure. Keep in mind, these are the same people that said Russia interfered in, you know, the 2016 election to help Donald Trump, right? So that was totally plausible that a foreign country interfered in that one. But in 2020, the idea for them is beyond their own, you know, perception, I guess. They can't fathom the idea that there was foreign interference. And again, you know, I've been pretty adamant that I don't think it was Maduro and, you know, Chavez and all that stuff. But I do believe that there's absolutely a possibility there was foreign interference. I've never denied that because I know, you know, there's this kick where, you know, there's competing factions in that realm. And, you know, I just don't think it was Maduro and it was Chavez. I think that's the globalists that have been doing this for a long time. And I think that Gabbard absolutely has business being there. And so does President Trump. We'll jump in to, we're running out of time. I do want to open up the phone lines for a little bit here. But this is President Trump being asked that question. Let me get the volume right here. Why can't I do that? Change the volume up.
Trying to keep the election safe, and she's done a very good job. And they, as you know, they got into the votes. We're going to sign judge's order in Georgia, and you're going to see some interesting things happening. They've been trying to get there for a long time.
Will you be pulling back immigration?
So he says, you know, basically, you're going to see some very interesting things there. They've been trying to get that information for a long time. Apologize for the volume on that, but this is my favorite clip so far. The John Carl one was pretty good, the meltdown, but this one's my favorite so far. This is John Ossoff, who is one of the direct benefactors of the stolen election in Georgia in the January 5th runoff that literally changed the entire dynamic of the politics in Washington, D.C., giving Joe Biden the quote unquote trifecta in federal government.
And this is a seismic event. This should have people across the country absolutely shook. This is
just keep in mind, guys, this is a seismic event, but the Mar-a-Lago raid, that was a justified execution of a search warrant, and a judge signed off on that. A judge that was directly involved in, you know, Jeffrey Epstein and all sorts of other things, Hillary Clinton ties and all that. But yes, that was a seismic raid, or this one's the seismic raid. You're muted.
Also worth mentioning that he's speaking to a woman who was press secretary for the fake and illegitimate Biden administration, who
Correct.
only, quote unquote, came into office on the back of this same fake election.
Correct. So let's get back into this.
a huge deal. This is an FBI raid on the Fulton County Elections Office. His conspiracy theories about the 2020 election have been based in Georgia from the very start. Georgia is where he called the Secretary of State and said, find me the votes that he needed to win in a state he had lost. So much of the big lie that led to the January 6th sacking of the United States Capitol, that had a mob seeking the Speaker of the House and the Vice President to lynch them, originated in his lies about the state of Georgia. And here he has the FBI, which there are so many hardworking, diligent public servants in FBI field offices all across the country, but its headquarters now in the thrall of these political appointees, Kash Patel and Bongino and this guy from Missouri in the deputy role, who are partisan political actors, raiding this election office in Georgia, seizing all of this information, all of these records, taking it who knows where, chain of custody now broken. And here's the thing. This is a shot across the bow at the midterm elections. He tried to steal power when he lost it in 2020. We have to be prepared for all kinds of schemes and shenanigans. We have to be prepared for him to try to deprive people of their voting rights. In Georgia, where we have the most competitive United States Senate race in the country, and I'm asking people to help me defend this election and voting rights in Georgia, to log on to electjon.com, electjon.com.
All right, we can end there.
You got to love that they're using it as a campaign, like an aspect of their campaign. Vote for me to save our elections.
And by the way, it's totally uncool for you to try and ensure that the vote actually went that way, and to validate that by looking at the ballots. And yeah, I realize he was a beneficiary, not a benefactor. Thank you for that. A beneficiary of the stolen election in 2020. Yeah, this is just nuts, man. I mean, these people, the meltdown they're seeing over this, I gotta think that something's gonna come of this. And when you look at all the research that these people have done into that election, the Joseph Rossi's, the Kevin Moncla's, the complaints that they've put forward, the attempts that they've made to get in answers to this, and the complete and total, obfuscation to get those answers, you got to think something's going to come of this. And the question is, like, all of this, are they trying to get people to believe that somehow now the FBI that they totally trusted raiding Mar-a-Lago, the FBI they totally trusted with all the J6 investigations and all of that stuff, now all of a sudden they're corrupt beyond means, and they're going to somehow like destroy evidence or create evidence to put in this? I don't know what they're trying to do here. I would just shut up about this and just let it go. But they can't do that because they're all gonna, I don't know. So, did you freeze?
I don't think so.
Oh, okay. There you go. Sorry. It just got really...
Just mentally, buddy. Just mentally.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know, man. We're going to talk a lot about this on Why We Vote tonight, go through reactions, talk about the warrant and everything else a little bit more. So, we'll start to wrap up here. I did want to open up the phone lines to take a few calls. Oh, did you see this in the very serious Ukraine war?
Personally asked President Putin not to fire on Kiev and the cities and towns for a week during this. It's extraordinary. It's not just like cold, it's extraordinary cold, record-setting cold. Over there too, they're having the same. It's a big pile of bad weather, the worst. But it was really. They said they've never experienced cold like that. And I personally asked President Putin not to fire into Kiev and the various towns for a week. And he agreed to do that. And I have to tell you, it was very nice. A lot of people said, don't waste the call. You're not going to get that. And he did it. And we're very happy that they did it.
Oh, I love that clip so much for numerous different reasons. First and foremost, as a Marine, the idea of like, I'm just trying to think when I was deployed, if my platoon commander came out and was like, hey guys, we're shutting down for a week. It's too cold. Like, that would have just been the funniest shit you could ever imagine.
Yeah, you get snow days like in school.
It's too cold. The war has been canceled. It's been postponed for a week. This is so fake, man.
You're not allowed to say that, Brian.
The war is postponed. The temperatures are too cold. The rifles are freezing. The gunpowder is ice. I don't even know what to make of that. But then the ability for Trump to just call up Putin and be like, hey, can you do me a favor? Can you just not bomb Kyiv for a week? And Putin's like, yeah, sure. I got you, Donnie. I just love it. All right, let's go ahead and open up the phone lines. I wasn't prepared for this. Bear with me. Well, I was prepared for it, but I didn't have all of it. And I got to get the banners there. Bam, there we go. 561-877-1367. If you guys want to call in and tell us about all the shenanigans. Oh, did you see while we're seeing, if anybody wants to talk to us, I don't know. Did you see the guy that dropped his pants and said he killed Charlie Kirk? He was he pled guilty yesterday.
No.
Yeah, he pled guilty to obstruction of justice and kiddie porn. And
what?
Yeah. Here, look, check this out. I'll show you. George Zinn pleads guilty to obstruction of justice for actions following Charlie Kirk assassination and possession of CSAM.
Isn't this like the crisis actor that they showed us the picture of? Oh gosh,
George Zinn. Good.
It sucks because once you attach the CSAM element and stuff, everybody wants accountability on anyone who's involved in that in any way. But this sounds like total bullshit.
Yep.
Call from Arizona Lady.
Arizona Lady, can you make sure your background volume is turned down? And how are you doing?
I'm doing awesome, guys. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday. And it is indeed a happy Friday.
Well, I wanted to talk about two media psyops that are going on here in the Phoenix metro area.
Okay.
I think the one psyop, the first one, is in more than just the Phoenix area. What's happening is that during lunchtime, high school students are walking out of their school. The media happens to be there, and every day it's a different school. And I noticed that this is also going down in the Tucson area. And my daughter lives in the neighborhood across the street from one of the high schools where the students had left for the day. And some of the students park their cars in that neighborhood so they can get in and out of the area fast. So my daughter was talking to these students, and they're saying, yeah, the teachers say if you go out and you do this protest, and if you miss class, we will mark you as being there, not absent. So the Red for Ed is the commies that control Arizona education. They're behind this.
Red for Ed?
Red for Ed. Yeah.
Wow. They don't even hide the communism.
Pardon?
They don't even hide the communists.
No. So they're the ones that are pushing this with the teachers and stuff, and then they put it on the news like if this is serious, people are protesting, and they're concerned. No, it's high school kids taking advantage of the situation. Now the second psyop that happens Monday evening, a bar and grill called Zips, Z-I-P-P-S. They have a dozen locations here in the Valley. They were served federal warrants at several different locations. So what happened is the kitchen manager and the owner were hiring illegal aliens, and, IRS is involved. So anyways, federal agents came upon several of the bars, and the media, all four, Fox, NBC, CBS, NBC, local media, was at several of these locations. They knew about this beforehand, okay? And they led people to believe that these were ICE raids, and they were not ICE raids. ICE was never involved in it. So like the Tempe location where they were raiding, the Maricopa County sheriffs created a barrier, so there was nothing going on there. But at one of the Central Phoenix locations, they had press there, and they kept egging this on and referring to ICE, but it wasn't an ICE raid. In fact, they were being very vague about it. And so then by the 6 o'clock hour, because this started at 4, by the 6 o'clock hour, sure enough, they got their crowd that they wanted, about 24 people antagonizing the federal agents that were working. And so they ended up having to call in backup, so these guys could get out of the area and everything like that. And the press is like, oh, look, all these people who showed up to protest. But where this restaurant's located, there are other restaurants, a huge gym that people go to. So there was a lot of looky-loos. But the whole time the press during this 2-hour period were trying to egg people to come to where these agents were.
Right.
And they were showing the addresses of the restaurants that were getting raided on the news.
Right. Just real quick, and we've got to let you go after that. Do you know what agency it was that was conducting the raids?
IRS. And Homeland Security.
Well, Homeland Security is an umbrella.
So, but there were
like
no
HSI?
ICE agents that were involved.
Okay.
That I do know. So.
Okay. Well, thank you for the call, and we appreciate that. Yeah. So thank you for the call, Arizona lady. Appreciate that.
Guys, bye.
So that is the school thing's interesting because I saw an article this morning that a kid got ran over at one of these protests. And I don't think it was in Arizona, but when Preddy got shot, they canceled school the next day, the next 2 days, I think, in Minneapolis. And I had said that I think they're going to do that because they want. It's sick to think this, but they want the kids out there protesting, because some of them, not all of them, but some of them will go to these protests just to see what's going on and film it and get the next viral video for the IG, for the gram. And then I was worried that, somebody would get shot, somebody would get arrested, beaten up, something along those lines. And now yesterday we got this kid getting run over by a fucking car that has a MAGA flag on the back. Cause that's what you're doing. Oh yeah. There's a MAGA flag on the back of it. Cause that's what you do is pull up and just stop in front of a crowd of kids. And this is kids. This wasn't like, some crazy protest. I think it's totally a staged event, and they're getting the optics that they want out of that. So thank you for that call. Appreciate that. Let's see if we can take maybe 2 more before we get out of here. So yeah, while we're waiting, because I had to do not disturb, I apologize, guys. Yeah, the Zin thing. Here that is. There was something interesting. Oh, during his detention, police asked if they would find anything illegal on his phone, and he responded saying that he used his phone to view child porn. And then, yeah, he could serve up to 5 years and all this other stuff. So interesting. Oh, let me see if I could grab. There we go.
Call from Unati.
I think you said Lunati.
Unati.
Unati.
Unati,
yes.
How are you?
Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
I'm
Good
excellent.
morning.
How are both of you?
Very good.
All right, excellent. I just wanted to say, love you guys. I appreciate your viewpoints and all of the friction. It's great. Love it. Brian, I do want to, I take issue with you. I'm from Michigan. I'm a Michigander. Not a Michigander. I'm a Michiganian. And none of us, no one that I have ever grown up with ever says Warsh. It's not a thing.
Where am I thinking of Warsh then? I thought that
Pennsylvania has some of that.
Wisconsin, and a lot of people mix up Michigan accents with Wisconsin accents. I don't know why.
Okay.
But
all right.
It's not. It is not a thing we say.
Okay. Well, I will retract that. I served with a guy in the Marine Corps that was from Oregon who used to say onion and Warsh. So maybe it's like Washington, Oregon, Pacific Northwest thing. And I for some reason,
that Michigan isn't anywhere near those two states.
I've been to Michigan many, many times. Yes, I am aware. I love Michigan. Beautiful state.
And I love your wife too, by the way, Brian. Just love her. She's great. She's so cute. She's adorable. Love her. She's wonderful.
Thank you. I'm going to have to tell her to go back and listen to this so that she can hear that, and she will appreciate that.
And I just want to tell Chris Paul, really admire you, brother. I appreciate you a lot. I think a lot of people misunderstand you. Obviously, a lot of people misunderstand you. But I really love that you challenge people to question things. Like, I think that, even me, like when I listened to you in the very beginning, I'm like, oh my gosh, will he please just get to what he's trying to say here? And I totally misunderstood, where you were coming from, but I think I get the idea, that you like to challenge people to think for themselves and try to come up with, the things on their own and stop believing every damn thing. And I appreciate that about you quite a lot. Really love that about you, brother. And for both of you, I just pray that God blesses you and your families. And I hope to meet you sometime.
Well, thank you, Nancy.
Yeah, thank you so much for that call. God bless.
God bless you too. Thanks. Bye.
All right. So I will correct the record. It is not Michigan. Michigan's a beautiful state with horrible politics, but a beautiful state nonetheless. And I will have to let my wife know about that call. I go back, Chris, when I was going through my Rumble, I go back to the shows that we used to do like way back in the day.
Oh yeah.
I can say that that's definitely one of the coolest things that I enjoyed having conversations with you, is that you'll challenge everything. And you should always challenge everything, right? You should always challenge everything. Yeah. But yeah, that's one of the best things is being able to get to the foundation of truth and what is truth and what isn't. But unfortunately on this show, I kind of have to look at things and take a little bit of a suspect.
I think you do a great job on this show.
Uh-oh.
Call from Laura.
Hello, Laura. How are you?
I'm doing great.
This one came in as suspected spam. Uh-oh.
I'm
Are you
not spam.
Are you spamming,
I'm a
Laura?
live 63-year-old girl sitting here learning from all of you. I appreciate you so much. I believe exactly like the previous caller about blessing you and praying for you. I had a quick question. What is kayfabe? Ghost talks about this, and I don't know what it means.
Go ahead, Chris.
Well, kayfabe is a term from professional wrestling, and it's kind of the acting as enemies that they do in order to make the rest of the show that they're doing seem real. They're not actually enemies, but they have to pretend that they are enemies for the act to be convincing. So I think that's a
like
decent
the uniparty.
Yes,
exactly. Yeah.
All right. Well, that was it. I just had a question. I love you all so much. Thank you for what you're doing.
All right.
Thank
God
you.
bless, Laura. Take care.
Thanks.
Kayfabe. Yeah. What's the other one? Kabuki theaters along the same lines, similar.
We, I don't know, it was maybe a year ago. Gosh, I can't think of his last name right now. Maybe it'll come to me. But Dominic, this guy, they made a movie about him, I think on HBO. He played by Benedict Cumberbatch. He was the campaign manager for Boris Johnson for the Brexit movement back in 2016. But that guy uses the kayfabe construct all the time, and I think he's been doing it for way longer than we have. Dominic Cummings.
Kathy CTX, how are you? You're going to be the last caller, so.
Excellent. I'm glad I made it in. So I met you at the Dart in Cocoa Beach.
Okay, that was a good one.
Yeah, it was. Oh, we had the best time. My sister Beth and I were there, so you may remember us.
Of course, Dallas, right?
Exactly.
I got
and
you.
that's why I was calling.
I heard that. I heard it didn't come to fruition out there.
No, it didn't, and that's why I was calling, because they kind of called it off at the last minute. I wondered if you knew about it.
The only thing I heard was that they couldn't get enough volunteers, and
well, that's what they're saying. I don't know if that's exactly the reason. Lieutenant West, he put out one statement. The only one I could find was actually on Facebook. They didn't even put a statement on the Dallas County Republican website. And they kind of sent us a message, but it was very vague. And that was basically the reason he put was he didn't want to set us up for failure. But I had joined a team that was in place to recruit volunteers, and they were set to have a start on January 1st. So I was all geared up and ready to recruit volunteers, and then they pulled the plug last minute.
Do you
I
know?
don't know. It's very disappointing.
Do you know where Collin County is?
Yes, I do. That's where my sister Beth lives.
Okay. Tune into Why We Vote tonight if you can.
Oh.
I saw something on Collin County. Jennifer Asper on X sent it to me, and it's apparently they're considering going with a federal and a state ballot, like splitting the election. And I'm very interested in this. I haven't had a time to dig into it yet. So, but yeah, that's all I heard about Dallas County too, was that they didn't get enough volunteers. So that's tragic. I was really excited about that.
Yeah, I'll definitely talk to Beth, and we'll watch tonight to hear about Collin County. But the only other thing that they did tell us at the last meeting was that they were going to do precinct level voting. They're still going to use the machines. They're still going to use the ballot marking devices, but and still the poll books. But people are going to have to show up at their precinct. That's my understanding of it.
All right. Well, we'll let you go here because we gotta start wrapping up. But thank you so much for the call, and tell your sister I said hello. It's good to hear from you guys again.
It's good to hear from you. We'll see you in Nashville.
All right. Looking forward to Nashville. God bless. We'll talk to you later. So let me shut that down. So yeah, the Dallas County, they the precinct thing, if the mail-in ballots come back to the precinct, which is kind of very difficult, huge logistical nightmare. Precinct voting is still like a thing, unless you're like Maricopa, where they have the vote anywhere. There's a couple places that have ballot on demands from anywhere in the county. That needs to go away. But generally, like if I go try and vote at a precinct that's not my precinct, they tell me that you have to go to your precinct. So that maybe it's a win. I don't know, if you guys had ballot on demand before or not. But yeah, the Collin County thing's interesting. We'll talk about that tonight a little bit on Why We Vote as well. And let's jump into some rants. Did you have anything you wanted to add, Chris? Sorry.
No, sir.
Kind of dominating that. Let me take this.
All good. That's your field, buddy.
Ginger Because says Lemon was charged with conspiracy to deprive others of rights and the FACE Act. That's excellent that the FACE Act is in there. That's a big one, because that's where I think all of those people, especially given the Mark Houck standard, that they definitely violated that. Blue Demon 75 says Happy Dawn Lemon Day. Ziggy Girl, what does a 1776 government look like in 2026? Man, that's a good question. Well, it wouldn't be a 1776 government. It'd be a 1783 government, because we still were under the Articles of Confederation in 1776. But that's a good question, actually. You want to take that one? It's a long question, but
yeah, I guess I'm not sure how to even approach that, but the hope is, and this is something that we've kind of talked about for a few years now, that Donald Trump is that this program at large is meant to take us back in that direction toward the original Constitution. I think we might actually have to go further than that. But I think that he is implementing some of that while he still also participates in the constitutional abomination that is our current form of government, that we are told is constitutional and is absolutely anti-constitutional. So I think that we're seeing some of that 1776 principle and maybe some of that action reemerge, but I don't think that we've seen nearly enough yet.
The one thing I will add, and I've mentioned this at GARTS before when we talk about the Constitution and all that, is our Congress would look like 9,429 representatives based on the Constitution. One representative for every 35,000 people. So it would be very large. It would be very large. And like Chris said, I think that if you did have a Congress that large, first off, you'd actually have representation, but it'd be so diluted. But at the same time, could you break it up into regional, like, spheres of influence, the sovereign alliance within the United States kind of thing? I don't know. And I also will point to Jefferson, who said that a constitution shouldn't last more than 19 years, and we're 250 years removed. So, Misfit, Misfit556 says, Can, do you have any digging into James Fishback, who's running for governor here in Florida? Says some very interesting things. No, I do not. Believe it or not, I do not get too involved in local politics. Like in Florida, I haven't paid much attention to it because of the show and the elections and everything. But I'll definitely look into it because it's about that time for me to start, getting into all this. Sassy Girl says, I don't trust Maria Zack. I know her well. She claims frequently she gave Elon the idea for Doge and DeSantis the formula to get rid of property taxes. It's hard to know when she's telling the truth. Interesting. I looked into that when it happened. I remember I was driving home from J6 when she, was doing the thing about, Leonardo's spa, and I gave Trump the thing at dinner and all this stuff. And, the lawyer that said that he's representing the guy from Leonardo Spa, he checked out. He actually checked out as a lawyer that was, qualified to litigate before the Italian Supreme Court and all that. But I never really, I paid attention to it for like a couple weeks or months. And then it was like, oh, this is pure hopium and can't prove anything. There's a lot to the claims that are made, but her side of the story, I don't specifically pay much attention to. So Chris, what do you got coming up, brother?
Well, I'll be on Devolution Power Hour tomorrow. I am hopefully this weekend releasing a new piece of writing called Chicken Egg Chicken that I talked about on Story Hour on Tuesday evening. And, I have the amazing Beth/Esther in my Telegram chat and now in my Substack chat. And she often will clip these pieces of these Badlands shows. And so I've started posting those on Rumble. So if you guys need short clips to be able to share and push stuff out, go to the Rumble channel. I'm your moderator over on Rumble.
All right. And Ali Stussy says, thanks for all you guys do. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Guys, have a great weekend. Stay tuned tonight. Why We Vote, 7:30 p.m. Eastern, followed by Spellbreakers after that, and then Only Lands following that. So 7:30 p.m. Eastern, and we will see you guys there.
Thank you so much for joining us, and don't forget to hit the thumbs up on this video. And a special thank you to all of our advertising partners. Please remember to shift your dollars to support those businesses that support Badlands Media.